We got the full suite of things. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Standing Committee on Economic Development and Environment. My name is Robert Hawkins. I'm the MLA for Yellowknife Centre. I'm also the chair of the Standing Committee that we have here today, the Economic Development and Environment. Before we begin, I'll now ask my colleagues, both online and in person, to introduce themselves for the record, and then we'll proceed to the public briefing. So I'll begin with my very far right, and we'll work our way around.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kate Reed. I'm the MLA for Great Slave here in Yellowknife. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. I'm Shauna Morgan, the MLA for Yellowknife North. Happy to have you folks here today.
I believe we might have a member. Yes, we have one member online at this particular moment. If you would, please.
Good afternoon, or good morning, sorry. Julian Morse, MLA for Frame Lake.
Thank you, everyone, colleagues, that is. And so what we'd like to do is now we're joined by the Minister of Infrastructure to receive a briefing on the Yellowknife Airport. Before I pass the microphone on to the Minister, we look forward to this briefing. Apparently it's been a long time coming, not necessarily in the queue, but the overall initiative. And I know I'm very excited, including our millions of subscribers who will be following along very closely. So, Minister, I'll proceed to you. With your opening remarks, if you could also introduce your delegation, and then we'll follow through on the presentation. Thank you. Please.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to come to committee and speak about the Yellowknife Airport Gateway Strategy. Joining me here today is Kathy Moniego. She's the Deputy Minister for Infrastructure. Also Sam Shannon, Assistant Deputy Minister, Regional Operations. Randy Straker, Regional Airport Manager, and Jeff Ray, Ministerial Special Advisor, and a few other staff behind me here. So, as you are aware, the Department of Infrastructure oversees the operation of the Yellowknife Airport, which is a critical regional economic driver to the north. The department has been working with the stakeholders such as the City of Yellowknife, airport tenants, to prepare the Yellowknife Airport Gateway Strategy, which is intended to guide development of this critical piece of infrastructure for the next 50 years and beyond. Today we will share the overview of the Yellowknife Airport Gateway Strategy and the land use plan, along with the details about where we are in the process with the Department of National Defense. There has been a good deal of news about the DND's interest lately, including the advanced procurement notice of some planned upcoming public engagement. With your permission, Mr. Chair, I will hand this over to the professionals to give you a presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have three professionals. Any particular one of choice?
Mr. Shannon.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shannon, if you would lead us through the presentation, and we'll hold questions for the end. Sure. So, and before we begin, I'll note Mr. MLA McNeely has joined us for the official. Please, if you would.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister. So before getting right into the slide deck, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the YZF Economic Advisory Committee for their work in driving this project forward. So led by Chair Peter Vishian, the committee provides valuable insight and recommendations on airport development to ensure its long-term success. So committee members who have participated in this work include Tim Sear, Rebecca Connolly, Mark Henry, Kathy Bolstad, Kelly Kalo, and Jen Hayward. We'd also like to thank Tom Ruth and Intervistas, two of our consultants, for their work in helping develop the draft land use plan. Okay, so this slide that's up now gives a bit of a roadmap of where we're going to go today. So hope to touch on the ultimate draft land use plan, some next steps for the airport terminal building, what we heard from our stakeholders as part of our engagement, and then ending with an update on D&D. So I think, as we all know, YZF plays a critical role as a regional economic driver for the north. This year, passenger movements are expected to exceed 600,000 through the airport facility, with direct air service to approximately 20 northern communities across the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. Many other communities are connected through key regional hubs such as Inuvik, Rankin Inlet, Cambridge Bay, and Iqaluit. The airport is also connected to 5 major southern Canadian cities, including Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Toronto, and Ottawa. Collectively, this positions YZF as a critical and strategic gateway into the Arctic. Beyond civil aviation, YZF is increasingly important from a national security and economic development perspective, supporting defense expansion and serving as essential infrastructure for major initiatives such as the Mackenzie Valley Highway and the Arctic Economic and Security Corridor. So anyone who has visited YZF Terminal recently or at any time over the last number of years knows that there are a number of challenges. Built in 1963, we're seeing the impacts of its age through rising maintenance and operating costs year over year. The facility has exceeded its practical and useful life, and it simply wasn't designed for today's travelers or today's aircraft. Accessibility is limited, passenger flow is outdated, and the terminal cannot efficiently accommodate the modern fleet mix. Compounding the challenge is the lack of space to expand. Surrounding development has effectively boxed the terminal in. Taken together, this means continued patchwork upgrades are no longer a sustainable solution. What's needed is a long-term replacement. At peak travel times, the terminal experiences significant operational bottlenecks. We see that in both the boarding areas, the baggage claim, and security areas. So despite these challenges, it's not all doom and gloom. YZF continues to meet passenger demand through operational efficiencies and pure staff effort. However, the current rate of growth will continue to add further challenges in the near future. So, knowing that we need a new terminal, it was important that we took the time to look at the entire airport site with a long-term view. This helps ensure that decisions are made strategically and that we don't have unintended consequences for other areas or uses at the airport. To help guide us, 4 key outcomes were identified from the beginning, as outlined on the slide. Through broader strategic planning, YZF has consistently anchored decisions around 4 key beliefs: safety and security, financial health, growth, and partnerships. As the work progressed into land use planning, additional guiding principles were introduced to support those beliefs. These included thoughtful facility placement, long-term operational readiness, and coordinated support for the Department of National Defense. So as you have a look at this slide, think of these planning parameters and elements as the puzzle pieces that define our land use plan. Each of these pieces, from the terminal and cargo areas to D&D, general aviation, and non-aeronautical uses, plays a specific role in shaping the airport's long-term vision. The assumptions behind these elements were informed by previous airport studies and by industry best practices, with planning horizons looking out 20, 30, and even 50 years. The numbering on each item is intentional and helps guide sequencing, showing which pieces need to be placed first to build the plan in a logical and sustainable way. Ultimately, the goal is to achieve a balanced land use plan that supports operational readiness, economic growth, and long-term flexibility. So when exploring potential land use concepts, we need to take into account the fixed aspects of the airfield. Most important is the location of the runways and the space required for aprons, taxiways, and other navigational aids. So as you have a look at the image on there, the green pieces are the existing runways and aprons, and the purple and pink areas are kind of the other areas of the airport site. So once we identified the space available on the proverbial puzzle board, the necessary puzzle pieces, the next step was to define how big each piece needs to be. Each area was carefully sized and justified based on projected demand and the airport's long-term growth trajectory. This approach ensures the plan is practical, data-driven, and aligned with expected activity levels. For the terminal in particular, the analysis looks out over a 50-year growth horizon, recognizing what sustained expansion may require over time. It was also important to avoid placing new facilities too close together, as that could limit future scalability or operational flexibility. Overall, this process ensures that each puzzle piece supports both current needs and future opportunities without constraining long-term growth. So building on previous planning work, 4 land use concepts were initially identified and evaluated. Through that process, it became clear that upgrading or replacing the terminal on the existing site is impractical for a variety of reasons. As a result, the east side and west side concepts were ultimately selected for further evaluation. Earlier, we touched on some of the challenges of the existing terminal already, but another key consideration is that attempting a major reconstruction on the current site would cause significant disruption to airport operations, creating risk while still resulting in a compromised long-term solution. So the east and west sides of the airport were carefully considered as part of the land use evaluation. When assessed against the guiding principles and other key criteria, the east did not perform as well as the west side. In particular, optimized facility placement on the east side is constrained by congestion along Old Airport Road, which provides a single access point and limits flexibility. From an economic perspective, the west side offers more opportunities to support long-term revenue generation. There are also community considerations, as locating a terminal on the east side would introduce noise impacts immediately adjacent to established residential areas. Finally, from an airline operations standpoint, the east side location would result in longer taxi times compared to a more centrally located air terminal building, increasing operating costs. Taken together, these factors reduce the overall viability of the east side concept as compared to the west. So based on the evaluation criteria discussed earlier, the rationale for pursuing the west side concept is strong. Since the land use planning work was completed, recent announcements from the Department of National Defense have further validated decisions made through that process. This includes alignment with a planned utility expansion project in coordination with the City of Yellowknife, as well as DND's support for the proposed air terminal building location and the allocation of land to accommodate their future expansion needs. Collectively, these developments reinforce that the west side concept not only meets the guiding principles, but also positions the airport to support long-term operational, strategic, and defense requirements. So you'll see here a map of the actual airport site with the puzzle pieces placed on the board. So each of these elements were placed intentionally and in a specific order to support operational efficiency, future expansion, and long-term flexibility. Key feature of the concept is the proposed runway extension, which is designed to enhance connectivity to new markets while also providing greater redundancy and resilience for airport operations. The plan also includes targeted taxiway improvements that improve aircraft circulation, reduce time spent in the runway environment, and enhance both efficiency and safety. All of these design decisions are strategic and interconnected, with each element reinforcing the others. Together, the west side concept is about building capacity for the future, improving access, and positioning YZF for sustainable growth and long-term operational efficiency. So moving back to a new terminal, we revisited a traffic forecast that we had conducted in 2023 to help project potential demand into the future. Rather than changing the growth assumptions in that study, we used the same projected growth rates, but reset the analysis to a new baseline that reflects the actual passenger statistics from 2024. This allowed us to project potential growth over the long term. This also provided us with benchmarks against other airports with higher passenger volumes and similar operational roles to identify key metrics for planning, such as building size, apron space, gate capacity, and parking requirements. So these airports were selected based on their passenger volumes relative to YZF's long-term passenger forecast. Using these benchmarks helps ensure that the land use plan reserves sufficient space to accommodate the terminal area, not just today, but 50 years into the future. The intent is to build a new terminal that meets current needs while preserving the ability to expand over time without constraining growth or requiring major rework as demand increases. So with the draft land use plan in place, it was time to test our findings with key airport stakeholders. In October, we conducted a series of 16 stakeholder engagement meetings with participants listed on the slide. Other stakeholders were also provided materials and invited to provide written comments. The purpose of these discussions was to validate planning assumptions, gather feedback, and test alignment on the land use plan, with a particular focus on the proposed west side terminal and supporting infrastructure. We're happy to say that overall, stakeholders expressed general support for the direction of the plan, while consistently emphasizing the need for more detailed information, clearer timelines, and continued collaborative planning as the project moves forward. Stakeholder engagement confirmed that the overall west side development vision is broadly supported, with no fundamental objections raised by partners. That said, stakeholders were clear that the success of the project depends on addressing several key risks. These include close coordination with D&D, utility servicing capacity, advancing the level of planning detail, and refining demand forecasting. The next phase of work will focus on developing detailed functional plans, more refined cost and funding frameworks, and a clearer project schedule. This will be essential to maintaining alignment and coordination across civil, municipal, and military stakeholders as the project moves forward. So speaking specifically to one of those key stakeholders being D&D, going forward, development at YZF can be grouped into 3 different streams. The first is the work that D&D will be procuring and delivering directly for their own use. This is what was included in the advanced procurement notice that D&D put out a number of weeks ago. Our role in that work is to support with land requirements and to assist with permitting as necessary. As mentioned earlier, D&D has indicated that our proposed land use plan aligns with their requirements. The second stream is work that the GNWT will be delivering on behalf of D&D under the NORAD Northern Basing Initiative. We have recently signed a contribution agreement with D&D under its capital assistance program to fund design work for the following projects: an extension of runway 1634, which is the larger of the 2 runways, overlays and repairs on 1634, and work on the RISA, which is the runway end safety area, I believe I have the acronym correct, on the south end of that runway. In addition, a full-length taxiway parallel to runway 1634 on the west side, and a full-length taxiway parallel to 1028, the smaller runway on the south side. Also part of that design work would be an extension to the smaller runway along with overlay and repairs. The procurement process for this work has begun, and we look forward to having consultants in place as soon as we're able to. The third stream is moving forward with planning for a new terminal building. With the recent announcement of the Arctic Infrastructure Fund, the department has been invited to submit an application through Stream 1, which we will do to seek funding for the next phase of the required design work. The planning and design of a new terminal is a lengthy process, but in the phase, we will be seeking to complete a formal needs assessment, an operational plan, and a functional program. From there, we'd move on to more detailed design work. So to recap, we're very excited to be making progress in these 3 areas with direct D&D development, runway and airfield expansion and improvement, and preliminary terminal design. Once the proposed land use plan has been finalized, we will also be moving forward with developing detailed functional plans for the different land use categories, ensuring continued engagement with our stakeholders. So today, we look forward to hearing from committee, incorporating feedback, and looking to finalize the land use plan going forward. So with that, I'm happy to hand it back to Minister McKay, and thank you very much.
Anything, Minister McKay?
Yeah, I got nothing to add, but if I may, just for the Q&A part here, I may just get the subject matter experts that run the airport and work alongside of that to answer the questions when we get them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so some of the practice I've been usually following or trying to follow consistently, if not attempting to, if you could just point to whoever it is, that we avoid, minimize the ping pong process going back and forth and redirecting. So at this particular moment, I don't have anyone on the list. Oh, it looks like we have MLA Reid would like to begin, and we'll just start to populate it from there. Ms. Reid, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation today. Very efficient and thorough. I think what people in my constituency would have the most questions about would be the civil uses. Obviously, the terminal being reimagined is a big deal for a lot of folks who use YZF frequently. But before we get into granular details around that sort of thing, and I'm not sure you would have that information yet anyhow, is there any contemplation around what a project management timeline would look like, what amount of information would be available on such a timeline, and sort of benchmarks that you're hoping to meet and at what point in what year? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, looking for a volunteer. Assistant Deputy Minister, if you would.
Sure. Thank you for the question, and thank you, Chair. At this point, we don't have those specific timelines. That really is the next phase of work. So once we have the land use plan in place that allocates the space for different functions, then we can begin to drill down on what those quadrants or those pieces of land would really look like. And as mentioned with our specific to the terminal, as we look into the needs assessment, so what type of needs does the terminal need? The functional plan, so the types of spaces and the amount of space that would be needed for each category of use, and then the timelines that are associated with those would be the next kind of phase of the detailed planning. So we're excited to get there, but we're not quite there yet to have that detail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything further from you, Ms. Reed? If you would, please.
Lots, Mr. Chair, thank you. So in terms of practicality, and I realize there's a lot of moving pieces, but in your presentation, you identified that, for example, something that's an immediate need is another CATSA security line. As development happens for this new west side approach, what can people expect to see as that build starts to begin and maybe some really critical additions happen in the current terminal? What sort of expectations should they have for like say the next 18 or 36 months? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Striker, no, we're fully automated, don't you worry. Oh, now you turned it off. We often say, stop helping. We're going backwards. Okay, that's it. Mr. Striker, when you're ready.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. We've kind of continued on just with, I guess what you'd call more operational requirements, operational maintenance requirements, alongside kind of parallel to all the work we've been doing with DND and Intervista in developing these plans. We've got about 7 projects on the go right now, addressing various needs. We have common use passenger processing, which actually should go live, I believe, in May. Basically, it allows flexibility of airlines. We currently have a system called VMUs. It's just reached ends of life, so we're just replacing that. Some of the airside infrastructure, in June of this year, we're doing a patch on runway 1028. We're doing an overlay and repairs on taxiway Delta. We're doing overlay and repairs and drainage work on taxiway Echo. Again, those are happening in June, and then we're doing a patch on the apron at the main terminal in July. We just got notification walking into the meeting that we received ACAP funding from the federal government to proceed with RESA on runway 16, which is a runway and safety area. Basically, once you reach passenger threshold, which we did 2 years ago, we have to put in these safety areas. So we've got exemptions on 3 because of the potential D&D projects, but 1 we decided to move forward on, and we did get federal funding, so that'll happen hopefully July, August. We have the design work done. We just need to go to tender on the construction piece. Within the terminal itself, we have awarded design work on the main washrooms. That is supposed to kick off sometime this week or early next week with the design team. Long overdue repairs and expansion on the washrooms. And then concurrent to that, we are just submitting an application to CATSA to get approval for new technology. As stated in the presentation, it's really difficult to do any expansion within the building without taking significant space from another area. So we've chosen, at least in the short term, to go for efficiency over trying to expand and push the building out, which would be a multi-year project and probably in the framework of $10 to $20 million, where we can do this for probably around $1 million and double the throughput of passenger screening and increase some capacity in the hold room as well. So those are just a few of the projects that we've kind of definitely have on the books right now and are proceeding with this summer. So there'll be a lot of activity out there this year addressing several items, and then we'll continue working on these other projects. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. We now have MLA McNeely followed by MLA Morgan, and we'll proceed from there. Mr. McNeely, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I got to go to another Teams meeting here in another 5 minutes, so I look forward to processing the information. I like what I'm hearing, in particular the recent presentation. If you go back and look at the original business case here, some of the things that was said in there is now happening, such as the washrooms. And there's things that we can take for the expansion or upgrades or renos from the original business case and apply it to this one. So my suggestion would be to provide an updated business case from the original sent in. And the original sent in to increase sales or revenues, it wasn't a business case to increase terminal fees and landing fees. And to date, in 7 years, that airport made $50 million. So we can say in our expectations, we're gonna have more D&D flights. We're gonna have more landing fees, more revenues. So taking that into account, I really admire your aggression towards doing something this summer rather than sitting on that capital. And there's many times that I travel to the communities, and anybody for that matter, we see the huge lineups and we kind of wonder, well, what was the original plan? Right now, the baggage handler from one end of the building has to go down to the other end of the building to use the public facilities. So those are oversights that I'm glad to hear. The parking lot was an initial upgrade. Expanding the wash bay for the airplanes was an initial upgrade. So pulling those from the original plan to upgrade the new one, I think would be a huge effort to beautify our capital airport. So anyways, like I said, I got a Teams meeting here, but I look over reading the material, and I like what I'm hearing. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily McNeely. Not necessarily hearing a question there, so other than a compliment, which is always well received. Yeah, I know they're as common as unicorns around here. That said, I'll go to MLA Morgan, and we'll proceed from there. I have a few questions of my own once she's done. So please, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I want to ask first, so the plans to build a whole new terminal building, is there a sense that some of the D&D funding will cover the new terminal building? Or, like, is there any overlap between the military requirements and the new terminal? Or if not, where is the money or the funding going to come from for the brand-new terminal building? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Emily Morgan, I'll go to Assistant Deputy Minister, if you would, regarding the money.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at this point, we do not have a funded project for the terminal building. As mentioned in the presentation, the current step is to seek funding under the Arctic Infrastructure Fund to begin design work on a new terminal. We have not begun conversations specific to D&D funding of a terminal building. At this point, our conversations have been focused on the airfield improvements in the runway, taxiway. But that is a conversation based on their potential use of a new facility, as it would be adjacent to their new facilities that they're looking to build. So it's a conversation that we still need to have, and that we tend to do so, but we don't have any specifics at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Assistant Deputy Minister. Emily Morgan, when you're ready.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm hearing that right, you are going to be asking for D&D money for at least the design portion of the initial steps of the new terminal building, along with, like, is it part of just one huge package of, like, these are all the things we need to design the new airport, including the new terminal? Can you fund all of it? Or do you have to break it down into things that you can prove will specifically benefit D&D or the military? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Assistant Deputy Minister, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I'll try to clarify it a little bit better. So the D&D work is coming in a bunch of different kind of pieces. A lot of it's focused right now on dual use infrastructure. So for us, for YZF specific, we're focusing right now on the runway, taxiway, and apron aspect of it. We haven't broached the conversation on specific to a terminal with D&D itself yet. That's a conversation we still need to have based on their potential use of a new terminal facility to identify that dual use purpose. But what we are proceeding with to begin our design work on a potential new terminal is to seek funding under Transport Canada's Arctic Infrastructure Fund that was recently announced. So that is a $1 billion fund available for the Arctic for, again, dual use and kind of enabling infrastructure across the north. So given the work to start with an idea of a new terminal to ribbon cutting and having passengers move in and out is quite a lengthy process. We don't have refined numbers on what that would look like, so we're biting off a piece that's a little more manageable. We're hoping to get funding to begin that design work so that we can start zeroing in on what those numbers would look like. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just to squeeze in a quick one. My understanding is the Yellowknife Airport could be designated a strategic airport from what I've heard, or has that actually been explored? My understanding is it could raise the profile of the airport with respect to its needs, opportunity for funding and supports, not to mention the fact that when we're looking for a strategic infrastructure, nationally that is, by bumping it up, it moves it to a different category and it gets a different style of attention and response. So has that been considered or examined? I'll maybe go to you. I'm looking for a volunteer.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Stricker, if you would.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. That's not a term that we've heard discussed. Under the NNBI, or the NORAD, Northern Basing Infrastructure, there's kind of 4 projects wrapped within that: the future fighter capability, tanker transport capability, and then the recently announced Northern Operational Support Hub. All of those fall within the work that's happening at YZF. Lots of rumors kind of surrounding where we may go down the future, but that's just speculation right now. There hasn't been any commitment by DND, anything other than those 4 projects wrapped up within NNBI.
I'll probably come back to this. I think I have MLA Morris who would like to have a question, but I'll come back to it maybe as in general, recognizing that I guess ultimately I've been told it could be moved to more of a higher profile airport, recognizing its need and position, which means it could qualify for different types of funding through the National Infrastructure Bank. But anyway, that said, I'll just park it for now and I'll go to MLA Morris and I'll return to it. If you're ready there, Mr. Morris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have a number of questions. The first one is just whether you're going to be, with the overarching plan, with what D&D has brought forward, it looks to me like there's going to probably be more land needed from the city, but I could be wrong about that. So I guess the first question is whether you are going to be needing to require more land from the city, and if you've initiated that process. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Assistant Deputy Minister to MLA Morris's question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point in time, no, we haven't identified a need for more city land. That said, we've been meeting regularly jointly with D&D and the City of Yellowknife, and then directly bilaterally with the city to compare notes on these projects as they quickly advance, to identify potential issues that may come up. So that's not to say that there may not be a requirement as D&D's plans become more public and more well-known. But at this point in time, no, we do not identify a need for more city land. Thank you.
MLA Morris, anything further?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, that's interesting. I appreciate that clarification, because that's been something that's come up on our end, on the political end, I guess I would just say, is people have been kind of worried about whether we're going to be able to acquire land from the city in a timely enough manner. But this is honestly news to me that none is needed, and that all these improvements and expansions can happen within the current envelope of land that you guys have. The other question I had related to the city is just, have you been engaging with the city and working with them on any additional municipal infrastructure that's going to be needed to support this, namely water, sewer, if there's going to be any need for expansion? That was something that D&D has mentioned to me that they want to be engaging on, and ensuring that the expansion of facilities out of the airport related to their expansions won't negatively impact the city, in the sense of infrastructure that they may need, such as new lift stations or pump houses to support the additional demand. So I'm just curious how much of a role you're playing in those conversations as to the impacts of different expansions in the airport on municipal infrastructure.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll go to the Deputy Minister, if you would, please, to Mr. Morris's question.
Thank you for the question. Yes, we've been supporting the city with their discussions with D&D, particularly with respect to water sewer, the expansion of their line from the city over to the airport area. They have different scenarios. We've been supporting them in those discussions with D&D. They're also having their direct discussions and looking at a contribution agreement between them for those services. We also know that we will be needing services at the airport as well, and so we're part of those discussions so to make sure that we're all very coordinated between D&D, the city, and us for all of those services provided. And yes, we're participating in all of those discussions to make sure that we can facilitate that as well from a G&WT perspective in terms of land availability, permits, all of that. We're very involved with the city on that.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to squeeze in another one here, not having anyone on the queue. I think I heard land use plan. It's, you know, it certainly is. This, the Vista report is a roadmap to that. And I'm just wondering if you could ferret out or clarify a few of the timelines that you're initiating or hopefully integrate. So the report is the report, and then next, if I understand correctly, there's a land use plan that you'll have to commit, because obviously you can't commit to dollars in capital projects until you have an approved land use plan. I'm not telling you necessarily anything new, also saying to the public, because who will be expecting buildings built tomorrow, etc. My question really is built around where are you with respect to the timelines laid out in the reports and moving forward to the next phases? So whether it's the technical studies, the policy changes, business strategies, advocating, and engagement. So it's a big question, but there's a rollout process, if that makes any sense. And I think really the public at the end of the day is going to want to know what the steps or stairs are. You know, we go from one to the next, and rather than us all waiting for the last piece to magically appear. Assistant Deputy Minister, if you could help clarify some of that, or illuminate committee and the public. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll certainly give it my best shot here. So at a more micro level with respect to the land use plan, we've got our draft that's under consideration today. We're looking forward to getting committee's feedback on that and taking that into account and seeing what adjustments we need to make. From there, we would look to finalize it. And at that point, we've got our different areas of land use kind of situated. And that really allows us to start diving into what those specific pieces would look like. Part of that will be based on interest from commercial entities, from airlines, from things like that, depending on the use. With respect to the air terminal piece and a new design for that, it'll really hinge at this point in time on our application for funding under the Arctic Infrastructure Fund. With D&D, with going out to procurement currently for the runway work and things like that, once we have consultants in place, we'll be able to develop that timeline piece for that and what that would look like. So I think that's a lot to say that we don't have specific timelines for you at this point in time, but it is certainly our intention to communicate as openly and transparently and as often as we can through this, knowing the interests and knowing the impact that it'll have on an operating existing airport and how it's a lifeline for people going north and south. So we're committed to being clear in our communication on that and being clear on our timelines as they come into sight. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for that. Not having anyone, I'm just going to squeeze in another quick one. That said, I'll just ask, could you speak to your D&D engagement? It's funny, it's kind of the chicken and egg. They're driving some of this process, but that said, they're responding to this process. And, you know, I had asked through Lands, I know you're not Lands, but my concerns around the house is, are we dedicating enough energy and attention to their particular needs, recognizing we have a huge customer with a huge bag of money, just eager to spend it, you know, don't get in their way. In other words, don't obstruct the opportunity, find ways to dovetail. Could you speak to how you've received direct inputs, how you're responding to their needs, and have they offered inputs to their particular needs like that? The keenness of the relationship is obviously important. I mean, I'd like to think we're building the airport for them, but we're building it for the territory, and we can't ignore them at the same time as a giant customer. And frankly, they are a 100-year customer, maybe even longer, but I mean, obviously we don't work on 100-year timelines. But that said, they're a significant customer that may never go away, which is great. That said, could you speak to the broader picture? Assume Assistant Deputy Minister, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll start, and perhaps if it's okay with you, I'll hand it over to Mr. Straker to add some detail on that. But the airport has been engaging directly with D&D for going on 4 years now on these respective projects and gathering information as we're able to and as D&D's been able to share with us. So whenever called upon, we make sure we're there, willing to listen to them, hearing them out, providing information, whether it's technical studies around the lands at the airport, geotechnical and environmental, any of those things. Part of our process, and really part of what some might call the delay in getting our land use plan to this point, was waiting for that detail from D&D to make sure that we weren't working at cross purposes or we weren't pushing forward with a land use plan that would constrain D&D investment at the airport. So as part of that, we met directly with a significant team of representatives for D&D who were able to speak to all their needs and their planning up until that point in October. We shared with them a lot of the materials that we've shared with you today. They were very supportive and appreciative of that plot of land that we've reserved for D&D use. It is adjacent to their existing forward operating location, so there is some synergy there and ability for them to expand. So I guess from my perspective, perhaps before I hand it over to Mr. Straker, we're willing and able to meet with them at any opportunity. We want to hear them out, and we want to make sure that we leverage this opportunity for the future of the airport going forward. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Schrecker, do you have anything further to add?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would say going back as far as 2012, we made a concerted effort to kind of become D&D's best friend with the assumption that at some point down the road that was going to pay dividends. So stuff like embedding firefighters into our service, providing snow and ice control within their property as needed, assisting with a rescue gear setup, tear down, and any other activities. And then more recently, as ADM indicated in 2021, we started kind of the real concerted discussions on the NNBI piece. So all the projects that were related to that started talking about land needs and requirements. And we continue to have those discussions both on land requirements and operational needs, trying to get synergies. How can we, I guess, mutual beneficial projects. So whether that's 24-hour staffing, additional fire rescue, fire equipment, expanding the combined services building to house additional equipment to support their operations. And then obviously the land piece, which from day one we held up finalizing kind of placement of the terminal based on their requirements. And they've clearly indicated that 72 hectares that we've set aside is probably more than they need for their purposes. And looking forward, it meets their needs as well. So we've really worked hard on that relationship and continue to have a really good relationship across both operational and planning sides of D&D. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I would just comment by saying I wouldn't define it as a delay. I'd more see this case as a critical partner. They needed time to decide what they needed so we could respond. So I have questions now in the queue. It looks like from in this order, MLA Reid, MLA Morgan, and MLA Morris, and we will proceed from there. So Ms. Reid, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pardon me, I have a frog in my throat. So I'm happy this is within the purview of infrastructure insofar as I would like to bring up the building standards proposed legislation framework, whatever road you're going down right now, insofar as it aligns with what might come down the road in terms of accessibility. I'm really pleased to hear that the washrooms are being renovated. That's fantastic news. But whenever I fly through YZF, I note that people who come to Yellowknife, who are maybe visitors, tourists, et cetera, for the first time, who have accessibility needs are often, frustrated with the lack of ramps that connect to the terminal. It's not exactly the safest place to walk if you have mobility needs. And so people who might be able to be mobile down a rampway that connects to a terminal are not able to be mobile in the way that they would like to be in the current setup. So when we are looking at a refreshing of the terminal space, are accessibility issues being considered? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Minister?
I'll start and then we'll hand it over to Mr. Straker, but I'll just say, like, I've heard a lot of concerns over the last little while about the operations and people moving at the airport and issues with accessibility, and I've heard it from MLAs, I've heard it from residents. And I will say that the staff at the airport have been very accommodating, working well with what they got, and I want to commend them for that, and I know going forward, they have big plans to improve overall everything that's going on at that airport. So, and I mean, there's still a lot of work to do with the current building to help bring it up to, more efficient standards, bigger washrooms, stuff like that, taking out that little corridor walkway and extending the washrooms, I think is a good opportunity to have a Band-Aid until the new terminal is built. I just want to commend the work of the staff's doing with what they got, and I'll just hand it to Mr. Straker to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Sorry.
I appreciate the enthusiasm, Mr. Straker. Mr. Straker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the question. YZF takes accessibility incredibly serious. We had the Rick Hansen Foundation come in, I think it was 2 years ago, to do an evaluation on the building, and we did, I guess we achieved Rick Hansen certified. We're not certified gold. There's a few hurdles that we need to jump through to get certificated, to become certified gold. But we continue to look at those items and kind of check them off the list. Accessibility is one of our key things we look at when we do design. And one of the things that we've obviously incorporated into the design of the washroom is one of the key things that needs to be attended to. As far as things like ramps and gates, would love to have those. The proximity of the building to the runway just doesn't make it possible, because we'd have to push the aircraft closer to the runway, and then we start running into aircraft zoning within the flight path area. So there are some challenges that the building itself limits us on what we can do. But yes, we continue to work, and we'll continue to use organizations such as the Rick Hansen Foundation to help us navigate through topics such as accessibility. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Any further follow-up, Ms. Reid, if you would, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that answer. I suppose I just want to clarify too that I'm not saying that staff aren't doing the best they can with what they have. I am completely always thrilled with everything that staff does at the terminal, working with what they have. I guess my question was more about anticipating the future needs of the new building, and what you could speak to about that, and if indeed that those considerations are top of mind. I think you sort of answered that, but I'll let you expand a little bit more. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Straker, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can state that we will continue to use organizations such as the Rick Hansen Foundation and other consulting firms to help us ensure that accessibility is top and center of any development we do. There is a lot of requirements within Transport Canada, particularly regulated, but on top of that, we have just determined that that's an important item that we need to address, particularly being a central point for medical travel. This morning as I walked out to head here, there was probably half a dozen wheelchairs waiting to be boarded on a flight. So it is an area that we have some responsibility to ensure that we meet the needs of the residents of the territory. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. MLA Morgan is next, followed by MLA Morris. Ms. Morgan, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to follow up on funding plans and issues. And I realize that this piece is still being worked out. But going back to the Waikiki Airport Revolving Fund, which we looked at in our recent main estimates. And in theory, this fund is supposed to fund capital projects. And it was established in 2017, at which time the Yellowknife Airport stopped receiving like ongoing funding from the GNWT. It was supposed to be more self-sufficient. And so what we can see from the main estimates is that there's a total accumulated surplus of about $50 million. And so I understand that that is not going to nearly, begin to pay for the kinds of new capital projects that we're contemplating here. So my question is, what is the intention for the surplus in the revolving fund? Which kinds of capital projects will the revolving fund cover? Is there sort of a cap or like a certain type of small capital projects or type of projects or up to a certain amount? And then, I understand you're going to the federal government for some massive funding. But then I guess the question after that is, are you going to be coming to the GNWT as soon as this year for more capital funding too? Like, where are you looking to for capital? But maybe I'll start with just what is the YK Airport revolving fund surplus intended to be used for in terms of capital projects going forward? We'll start there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MLA Morgan. Looking for a vote. Mr. Striker, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. As you can see, this year we have a fairly ambitious construction plan for the year. I think we're in excess of $3 million in projects this year. When we talk $50 million surplus, we're talking assets as well. So that's not money in the bank. That's our assets as well, which on an airport that chews up a significant amount of that $50 million. But as we get into significant projects, we can eat that, what we do have in our capital AIF fund fairly quickly. Most projects, particularly when we get into asphalt projects, a runway overlay can run us $20 to $30 million, which would basically clean out our bank account. So as we plan forward and look at our projects, we're trying to either find federal funding to offset the larger projects or slot in these projects using AIF. So a lot of the projects we're doing this year, aside from RISA, is going to be 100% funded through the AIF. But as we get into these, mega, $100 million runway projects, we're going to be relying on D&D to support those. But we will continue to do repairs and maintenance and upgrades utilizing AIF and fleet as well. It falls under AIF. So we have, I would say in the last 5 years, totally replaced our fleet through AIF, both through the Capital Assistance Program and through our own funding. And we'll continue to do that going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Striker. Ms. Morgan, when you're ready for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is there a need or an intention to come to the GNWT for capital funding, or is the intention to just exclusively find what you need from the feds? And maybe you don't know, but I'm just trying to picture, is it realistic to think that everything you need is going to be funded by the feds, and if not, where else can you look? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I go to Assistant Deputy Minister, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at this point in time, for the foreseeable future, we're relying on federal funding for the runway design work and all of that. Depending on the outcome of an application to the Arctic Infrastructure Fund for design work on the terminal, we may need to seek alternative funding. But should we be successful with that, we'd look to proceed with that federal funding. So the way that we're kind of sequencing this out is by taking off kind of smaller pieces, having more defined amounts of money over a shorter period of time so that we can move incrementally through the process. Because at this point, when it comes to a terminal, we have no idea the price tag that it'll ultimately end up being. But we are able to drill into a specific ask for design work to take us through the next couple of years of the process. So that's what we're hoping for. So at this point in time, we don't anticipate approaching the GNWT through the capital planning process for funding. But like I said, depending on the outcome of the AIF application, and sorry, Arctic Infrastructure Fund, not to confuse it with the airport improvement fee, but subject to the outcome of that application, we may need to reevaluate it. But then that would come through the formal GNWT capital planning process. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Certainly, it sounds like a lot of planning still needs to happen. And of course, it's hard to design and implement a plan without knowing where you're going. So that said, I have MLA Morris next to ask some questions. Mr. Morris, when you're ready, we're ready for you.
Thank you. First bit is just a tiny bit of feedback. Mr. Shannon kind of mentioned that they were waiting for some direction or input from our committee before they finalize and move forward with the plan. I would just say, I mean, I don't consider myself to have any kind of expertise related to what you guys are going to do with the airport. So I'm happy to just say, I think my general feedback is I just want to ensure that the plan is moving forward in a timely enough fashion to take advantage of all the announcements that have come from the feds and the seeming enthusiasm that they have for investment in the north right now. So I think that's the main thing that I would bring up as a concern, is just whether we are able to take advantage of all that investment. One thing that has become a little bit unclear to me through the presentation is whether the runway expansion is coming from D&D and their investments or coming from our side. So can that just be clarified? Because the D&D mentioned to us when we met with them that that was something they wanted to do, was expand the runways in both Yellowknife and Inuvik. But I hear our infrastructure team talking about doing it from our side. So can I just get clarification on who's doing that, or maybe one runway is being expanded by one by the other? Thanks.
Thank you. I had a similar question. Assistant Deputy Minister, if you would help clarify that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at this point, we have a contribution agreement in place with D&D for them to provide 100% of the funding for design work on extending both runways, along with parallel taxiways and a few other kind of component pieces. So following that, if I may add, would then be the next discussion on construction costs once we have that design work completed. So it'll be us doing that work on behalf of D&D.
When do you think that design work could be done?
I am not sure on the specific time frame of it. It's something we can get back to you on, but we are just in the process of going out to procurement to bring in the consultants to begin that work. So that would be part of that process.
Thank you. I'm just anticipating Mr. Morris's question to save him a question. So, Mr. Morris, if you'd like.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to go in a slightly different direction with the next one, but appreciate that clarification that D&D is funding it. This one is a bit of a smaller consideration, but nonetheless important to folks who have written to committee and have talked to me. And I'm just wondering if any consideration is being given to the needs of small independent aircraft operators. We have a bit of a tourism industry involving small aircraft. We have some operators that they form, I think, a very small part of this when we look at D&D and everything they're doing, of course. But it is something that they've written to a committee and asked about, and I'm just wondering if any consideration is being given to their kind of small corner of the airport and the storage and fuel delivery needs that they have. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Assistant Deputy Minister, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, we would refer to that group kind of as the General Aviation Group. So we've reserved a parcel of land of 5 hectares on our proposed land use plan where they currently operate out of to remain for that use going forward. So they're certainly a group that we've engaged with in the development of this, and we will certainly be taking their needs and interests into account as we go forward as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just to expand slightly further, space was one of their questions, but also affordability was their other question. Being a small, not me, but they're representing themselves as small independent pilots trying to park planes, and it's hard to imagine someone who owns a plane complains that they're poor. But that said, it's like owning a boat, I guess, throwing money into endless amounts of money. Is affordability one of the highlights that you're concerned, watching their concerns? Because they talk about parking and landing fees. Is that being in part of the mix of the conversation to ensure that we can keep that northern legacy still live and vibrant? Assistant Deputy Minister?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I may hand it over to Mr. Straker because he's been
My
in
apologies.
discussions with the organization representing the general aviation.
My mistake. Mr. Stricker, if you would, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We meet with General Aviation at least annually, sometimes twice a year. We're actually meeting with them Friday of this week. We have, kind of a set agenda, kind of wants, needs, and included in that discussion will be, current fees, future fees. So yeah, it is a consideration both in the land use planning, and then we have ongoing dialogue with them annually to see what we can move forward and advance, what makes sense. Again, right now, because a lot of this is in flux and we might be moving them a little bit, general area, they're gonna stay. Investment's gonna be limited right now for that group until we know that this is the permanent home. But that dialogue continues with them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Well, I would just say from my personal opinion is I would hope that they would feel that their relationship is meaningful and their input is valued. And lastly, I wouldn't want to, no one has said they, I'm sure we want free, but that said, no one said that they wanted a free pass, but an affordable pass in the sense of an affordable relationship. And I would like, hopefully, that's kept, say, top of mind. More of a comment, not having anyone else on the list, I just, similar to Mr. Morris, I had a question regarding the runway extensions. Could you further elaborate, what's the sizing considerations? I mean, it's boxed in other words, there's residential, so unless we're buying houses, there's gonna be a point where we can only maximize this investment too. I'm not encouraging us to buy houses, by the way, for runway. But that said, I'm curious from my own, one of the things I've raised for years is always the airport extension for over-the-top flights, et cetera. Well, now the narrative's changed for the types of planes that may be coming in need. And would this open Yellowknife up to sort of an international airport status by expanding the length of the runway? Because that was always one of the problems, and briefly by way of background, in my previous tenure as an MLA, one of the concerns I always had was the fact that Condor was flying from Germany straight to Whitehorse, and I always felt like we were missing the opportunity. And even in, I remember reading the report around 2004 or 5, and by that time it was dated, but they had talked about the opening up the airport length, which would change the overflight paths, including emergency designation, et cetera. So tying all that sort of concepts together, what is the length and what type of traffic are we opening it up to, including status? Assistant Deputy Minister, would you be the first person? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the existing runway length of 1634, the larger one is 7,500 feet currently. Our initial planning and initial estimates were to increase that up to 9,500, but in conversations with D&D, they've given us the instruction to go ahead and plan for extending it as far as possible, which I don't have a specific number, but would be between 11,000 and 11,500 feet, which would put it, I think, quite comfortably in the top 10 runway lengths in the country. So it would be a significant extension. Part of that as well would be the smaller runway, the 1028, looking to go that to 7,500, which would allow the traffic that we see currently on our larger runway to be kind of the base for us. So this would open us up to pretty much any aircraft you can imagine being able to land and operate out of YZF. So a significant increase.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would that change any type of status for the airport, knowing that it's now a larger, it'd be really cool saying Yellowknife International Airport. Actually be exceptionally cool. But in all seriousness, because this is a very serious topic, though we can enjoy a little levity, but that said, would it change the status of the airport and its relationship in the airport network? And if so, what would that look like? Mr. Stricker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Generally, no, it wouldn't automatically change our status. We are what's called NETOPS airport, so we are on the polar route. So both flights heading from East Coast of North America over to Asia or from Europe to the West Coast, you're gonna, if you get on an app like Flight Radar, there's a lot of aircraft flying overhead on a daily basis. Currently, if there is an emergency, sometimes they will hover for a bit and then make a decision, no, on a 7,500-foot runway in the summer, we don't want to land there. It's just too close to our threshold, so they'll move on. 11,000-foot runway plus would be no consideration on their part. If they needed to land, they would just land. As far as, I'm sorry, I've lost the question. Status, yeah. The other thing that could change our status a little bit is going to be determined through the specifications provided to us by D&D through the scoping of the project. So whether we move to a different type category of approach on our runway. Right now, we're what's called a Category 1. We could move to Category 2 or Category 3, which just increases and provides some additional navigation, which then could change the category of our airport, which just kind of puts us at a kind of a safer or more accessible airport for larger aircraft or certain types of aircraft. As far as an international airport, our facility is going to limit us until we move. Can we handle an international flight? In a pinch, we can handle an international flight, but really it would be designed around a new terminal that would allow us some flexibility to change configuration to meet. And I think we wouldn't be looking for a year-round international flights, but similar to the Condor is the seasonal stuff that, you know, might summer adventure tourism or Aurora tourism.
Thank you. Yeah, it may be a bit early for us to be a gateway, but that said, the Whitehorse Airport was able to facilitate the need with their current airport, that is. So, just lastly, an observation, yes, you need a much shorter runway to land than you need to take off, especially take off heavy and loaded, so I can appreciate the value of how this is going to change the dynamics, so, including emergency and needs. So, just no further questions from committee. Why don't we work towards a wrap-up? I'm just running through to make sure I've asked. Just looking, no one online. And, with respect to formalizing this particular proposal, and I think it was already raised about, moving forward, and I totally agree. We don't want to be seen as, it's like the speaker before dinner, right? You don't want to be the person in the way of the rush, and we don't want to certainly be viewed as the one slowing the process down. Needlessly, I want to be clear about that. Sometimes it is important. But that said, what are your particular timelines that you're hoping to have this formalized? And with respect to sometimes, like, for example, on Aurora College, when they're talking about the Polytech, they have like a dedicated section on their website talking about the progression of these types of initiatives. Would that be something you folks could do or would look at implementing so that way the public has a sense of following how the project? Again, knowing that the airport is changing, we immediately jump to the finish line, and we tend to forget that there are multitudes of steps and progress and approvals and agreements and relationships, including money, that have to be built. So would that be something that the department would be interested in? But that said, to the first part of the question is, when would it be helpful to have feedback received? And that said, when are you hoping to have this next phase approved so you can move on to the next land use sort of planning steps? Deputy Minister, if you would please, your insight would be helpful.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I think we all agree we want to keep moving as quickly as possible. That said, in terms of finalizing it, we would like to get Cabinet's blessing before we go, but we're not holding up any work for that. We continue to work with D&D to progress on all of these fronts. So I think whenever is convenient for the committee, thinking that sooner is better than later, but I don't think we don't have cabinet dates or anything like that. So as soon as we have that feedback, we can finalize it, but we're not going to let it stop any of the work that we're progressing. And thank you very much for the suggestion around the communications and a website talking about the projects. I think that is a great idea that we will absolutely implement. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, and anything further from committee before we wrap it up? I'm not seeing any, and I'm just running through. No further. I think you covered most of my areas, or covered them enough, I think. That said, thank you very much. I'll go to the Minister for any final comment, and then I'll wrap committee up officially on the public record, that is. Minister, if you had any final comments, please.
Sure, no, just thanks for the opportunity for the staff and everybody to present the plans, and yeah, look forward to ongoing discussions, so thank you.
Okay. Okay, not seeing any further, I'll just say personally, I really like the West Plan. I also like, from what I've heard on the ground from some of the people that you've been dealing with, how excited they are about this next phase. So on a personal level, or a personal opinion is, I'm so excited to see this finally move forward. You know, you know, it takes time. So that said, I look forward to our next meeting. At this point, I'd now like to call the presentation officially closed, now that everyone's had a chance, and I wish everyone, including our millions of subscribers from around the world, I want to thank you and every official here today for this illuminating briefing, and I think the public is eager to see the next steps. Thank you, and may I wish you all a good day. Thank you.